Welcome to the second hour of World Crisis Radio. It is once again our 12th night edition and Epiphany coming up, the 6th of January. And we're looking forward to a world mass strike, triggered in particular by the victory of Syriza and Tsipras in Greece on the 25th of January. Some of you may be here taking that course we mentioned. You will be hearing about that. But that's the idea. But, of course, a mass strike solves nothing. Leadership is needed. Who's going to intervene? Who's going to provide a program? Who's going to push aside the mushheads, the Occupy freaks who say, no, we don't want to have a program because we might win our demands and get co-opted. So what we have to do, though, now is pick up on our friend, Reverend Edward Pinkney. Let me just say, before we go into our guest, Daniela Wall's contribution here, we attempted for this program to call the facility there in Michigan, Jackson, Illinois, in Jackson, Michigan, and we attempted to set up an interview with Reverend Pinkney, who does apparently have the right to, and strictly limited but nevertheless existent communication with the outside world. We talked, or better yet, Genesis Communications Network, and I thank them for this, Genesis Communications Network, in the form of the distinguished producer of this show, talked to the warden, attempted to explain the problem of a radio station, which has to have a schedule, and couldn't Reverend Pinkney please be available at a specific time tonight? Oh, no, said the warden, we can't just set up a time like that. You sort of have to leave it open. It sounds like they expect that if Pinkney gets the call, that we have to be ready to answer him just about at any time, which we will try to do. But you can see what the difficulties are. It's obvious an attempt to sabotage the connections of the communications of Reverend Pinkney with the outside world. But we have, fortunately, Daniela Walls, who has talked with Reverend Pinkney quite a few times, I think more than anybody except for his wife, in the time that Pinkney has been incarcerated. So let's go to Daniela and get an update. Welcome, Daniela.
Hi, Webster. That's a real shame that you couldn't get through to Pinkney, because more than anything, he wants to be on your show, and I know he was looking forward to that. If they're not going to make an appointment with you, then that means that he can only call out one call a day between 3 and 10 minutes. So I don't know how we're going to work this out, but I'm going to speak for him today. So let's get into this. Now's the time we should be most active, and I stress the need for international action to publicize this case more than we ever have. Now is the time to fight. If you believe that on December 15th, Pinkney's case was decided, or the sentence was final, it is not. If you find yourself somehow in a place of mourning instead of fighting, then you are misguided right now. Pinkney's final sentence is not until January 15th. So now is the time to fight. Governments should protest to the United States, call in their U.S. ambassador and say, we protest what you are doing. You are violating the Helsinki Accords of 1975. You are violating the OSCE civil rights provisions. Reverend Pinkney is on the United Nations radar. He met with the United Nations, if you remember, their officials a few months back. Reverend Pinkney is an internationally recognized spokesperson for this Michigan anti-austerity movement. At this time, we must make sure that the name of Berrien County is never idle on Google, even for a day. This is the same for Twitter, for hashtag Berrien County, hashtag Michigan, and hashtag Free Pinkney. No matter where you are or how small your town is, I guarantee you that there is a radical journalist in your area who wants to write an article about Reverend Pinkney. Report to me on Facebook, Daniela G. Walls, or at taxwallstreetparty@gmail.com about what articles you get. This way I can have activists make positive comments on your article and share it. Make sure we're also trying to catalog all articles for Banco. Make sure you as an individual have commented on all existing Pinkney articles. If the article happens to be a hit piece, like the one that was written by the Heritage Foundation, we've said in other episodes they're bringing out their big guns against Pinkney, and that says a lot, then reprimand their conclusions appropriately in keeping with your conscience. And if it is a positive article, thank the journalist appropriately. Make sure you have commented yourself on each existing article and fight to get your own. From prison, Pinkney has renewed his appeal to all of you to keep up the activism. Pinkney appeals to all people of goodwill to take up this case, pursue it, publicize it, complain, bring it to people's attention, word of mouth, Twitter, social media, protesting, phone calls. Write a letter to Reverend Pinkney and tell him what you are doing and have done. Imagine yourself in solitary in a jail cell. He wants action reports from active individuals. For example, an action report would be something like, my name is, and your state, location, so far, and then you would write something like, so far I have organized with my local name, the Activist Collective, spoke about and passed out flyers describing your case or the case of Free Pinkney. I have gotten articles in XYZ newspapers. I have organized X amount of donations to bhbanco.org. I have gotten this far with my foreign embassy, etc. Tell Pinkney what you have done. These are action reports. He is alone, like I said, in a cell and cut off from communication and needs action reports from you. The address to write to Reverend Pinkney will be posted at freepinkney.wordpress.com and at bhbanco.org, but I'll give it just once. Edward Pinkney is the first line, EDWARD Pinkney. Second line, prisoner number, so number sign, prisoner number 294671, 294671. Next line, G. Roberts, ROBERTS, Cotton, COTTON, Reception Center. Next line, 3855 Cooper Street. 3855 Cooper Street, COOPER. Next line, Jackson, Michigan, JACKSON, Michigan 49201. Reverend Pinkney appeals to you. He makes this special New Year's Eve Christmas holiday epiphany appeal to you. Jay Witten from our Russian local reports that important Russian journalists that are close to the Russian Foreign Ministry and Foreign Minister Lavrov are being briefed. They are interested in the case. Stay tuned next week. I will have more information on how our work in Russia is shaping up. We have about half the states mobilized, connected with their local civil rights and other interested local activist organizations, drawing parallels between their communities and the case of Reverend Pinkney to use Free Pinkney as an example of what might happen in their community and state while mobilizing to help Pinkney now. I need to go through a calendar of the case. Judge Chirac and the prosecutor Mike Sepik have not yet responded to our sentencing brief. Pinkney's final sentence, where Judge Chirac has the power to throw out the sentencing or ask for a retrial, is on January 15th. This will be decided by Chirac, who has tremendous discretion in matters before the court, including sentencing. Sentencing, our lawyers have their job, but we have to consider our role as activists. It is important now whether Chirac considers Reverend Pinkney to be a bigger threat in prison or out. If the international spotlight is on Berrien County with critical articles and press about Berrien County, then by January 15th, Judge Chirac may have to say to himself, this is not only not going to go away, but it's going to get worse. Most lawyers tend not to be big believers in activism, but part of Free Pinkney is that we are activists, and Reverend Pinkney is an activist. We can never let the lawyers get us so paranoid that we become immobile. Some people feel that writing to the judge is not a good idea, and some say it is a good idea. We say it is absolutely necessary. If Judge Chirac gets the idea that we have backed off in any way, then he will feel that he can do whatever he wants in his own that vacuum that exists there.
Hang on, Daniela. We'll get you back here in the next segment. Hold that thought. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Here we are with our Epiphany edition of World Crisis Radio. We're getting an excellent rundown on the situation of Reverend Edward Pinkney, now in jail in Jackson, Michigan, and efforts to free him, focusing in particular on the 15th of January, when there is going to be the final sentencing, as far as we can tell from the court calendar docket for this court. So, Daniela, please continue.
Okay, yeah, December 15th was not the final sentencing. We are looking to January 15th. And right now it's important to figure out how we can affect Judge Chirac's mindset. If Judge Chirac gets the idea that we've backed off, then like I said right before the break, he'll feel that he can do whatever he wants in a vacuum. We can't let that happen. If you are a lawyer or you are friends with a lawyer, make your friend that's a lawyer write a letter. Letters from lawyers are extremely important. If you know a judge, that's great too, but those are going to affect him the most. As you recall, he tended to belittle our letters, saying they were from activists, and we want to really get him this time with a bunch of legal letters. There's a bunch of points I'm going to bring up in a second about what he's done that appears to be illegal from outside counsel. Just like Judge Chirac said during Pinkney's initial sentencing on December 15th, he says he's going to make an example out of you. He said this publicly. We need to take Judge Chirac's words and do the same thing, make an international example of Benton Harbor. It's important to make an international example. No matter where you are in this country, there are activist groups in your area. I've gotten a couple messages that read, I'd like to help, but my area is a wasteland, no press, no organizations. Granted, these were isolated areas by comparison, but I Googled those towns with the words either that town plus activism or that town plus civil rights, and in both cases, 50 to 100 organizations came up with pro bono civil rights law firms, to Occupy groups that still meet up, to smaller activist newspapers. There's no excuse for any individual listening to your show today not to get at least one piece of local press and organize or ally with a group of local activists around the case of Pinkney. And as we know, Pinkney represents much of our American problems and corruptions. If you study the case, please make it, again, your job to effectively learn how to articulate this case and sell it to press in your area. We still need activists to write letters to the judge that say, how can you sentence a man with no evidence? And we know that on December 15th, this was a packed jury. You can bring up the case of Gail Freeling. And like I said, we need press. Whirlpool is actively trying to sabotage support for Pinkney by running their own hit pieces. They have pulled in their big guns. We have people who are active. But if you're not, then I suggest you get, a little less YouTube and a little more actions. Pinkney needs donations. Sorry. Pinkney needs donations. We need money to Banco to build an appeal fund and hire a Michigan bar-certified appellate lawyer, and the $6,000 court transcript. We didn't expect the court transcript to be this much, but it's going to be $6,000. So our current goal at bhbanco.org is $20,000. But this can be done because it's not just our organization. There's a lot of organizations mobilized, including Banco. And it's your job to try to get donations from civil rights organizations in your area. Even if it's $5 from each person, bundle that. Bundling is the key. And get that money to Banco. And then write a letter to Reverend Pinkney and say, I've bundled this much money and I've organized with this group. I need to interrupt you for a second, Webster, to let everybody know that there's going to be a class. You might have covered this, but I just want to cover it from our Tax Wall Street Party. We are hoping for the weekend of Friday the 23rd of January, Saturday the 24th, and Sunday the 25th, because people are preparing to book tickets. So stay tuned to Webster's Twitter for the final date and venue address, and we will also post it on all of our party Twitters, Facebook pages, and maybe you could post it on tarpley.net. We need to pay for this venue. And I think the time has come, Webster, for party dues. It's been a couple of years and we haven't asked, and the dues are going to be $20 per person per month. This will cover all the wonderful intelligence that comes from you and action from us, meaning we presented that wildly successful C-SPAN Russian fleets talk, but at that time we had to scramble to come up with the money to pay for the appropriate venue, and now we are behind for money to pay for the location for your class, and there are fees that we need to pay for everything, and instead of scrambling last minute, we've got tons of expenses on our end for Pinkney and just everything. And we're going to need, stuff is going to consistently come up, so we're going to need consistent party dues. This way we can do more and give you more. And to do this, please go to the taxwallstreetparty.org, and on the right side you'll see a PayPal button. You can make a $20 payment, and then you press the recurring monthly button. And this is probably the best investment that you can make, pound for pound and head for head. We are doing a lot, and we'd like to do more, but we are unable to do more unless we have some foundation. So please consider making a recurring payment to the Tax Wall Street Party. And we are working on all the I can tell you all the legal work we're doing now if you'd like me to keep going.
A brief summary would be good. Let's go to the end of the segment.
Okay, so here's a legal brief. And there's going to be some legal language here. But we've asked the judge, and we've been pressuring Berrien County to ask them if it's legal that Pinkney is in prison so far away from counsel before the judge responded to the sentencing brief. The sentence is not final, so why is Pinkney in prison? The final sentencing is scheduled for January 15th. We filed a sentencing brief that said Gail Freeling was friends and work colleagues with members of the prosecution. Gail worked with both Sharon Tyler and Sheriff Paul Bailey. When Reverend Pinkney's jury was seated, each member was asked under oath if they knew anybody on the prosecution. To cover the topic of what it means to know the prosecution, several questions were asked, including things like, do you know any members of the law enforcement community? Gail Freeling, on record and under oath, answered no to each question. She was asked about knowing the prosecution. Then it turns out with a simple Google search that Gail Freeling's work history, she not only worked with the members of the prosecution for many years, she's friends with them on Facebook, etc. She's closely tied to the prosecution. So thus, Gail Freeling has now retained an attorney for herself because of all this, because she lied under oath. And the whole point of what I'm saying is that this information about Gail Freeling makes this a packed jury and is enough to force a retrial, at which point we would insist on taking the trial out of corrupted Berrien County. However, we are assuming that the judge is going to try to dismiss our sentencing case. So what's the second thing we have to do to make him not dismiss our sentencing brief is that we have to make sure that the prosecutor, Mike Stepik's arguments against our sentencing brief and motions related to juror misconduct will be public. Our goal is to make sure that on January 15th, final sentencing, that is public with Reverend Pinkney in attendance with his counsel.
Okay, so the sentencing, that's a very important point. The sentencing on January 15th must not be behind closed doors but public. Daniela, we thank you very much. We're looking forward to hearing from you again next week. Thank you very much for an excellent overview.
You too. I'll be here. Bye-bye.
And Happy New Year. Welcome.